Pleasure. Today we're going to be talking about discipline. If you don't mind, just take a second and fill out that pre-survey that was included in your email before class begins. Go ahead and hit pause now if you've not yet done that. Go back to that email and then fill it out. You can just come back and hit play as soon as you're done. So like I said, today we're going to be talking about discipline, but every time we start a Make Parenting a Pleasure class, we go over our core themes and basic assumptions. The first one is parents who come to parenting classes are special. This is absolutely true. A lot of parents don't take the time to come to a class on something that they do every day, but the truth is that we can always continue learning about everything that we do. So it's great that you're here today to hopefully learn something new and get something out of this, maybe a new technique that you can try in parenting. Another one is parents are the foundation of the family. Parenting is the most important and challenging job there is, not like you need me to tell you that. Parents care deeply about their children. Parents are the experts about their children. Parents have to take care of themselves in order to take care of their children. There is no one right way to be a parent or a child. Parenting is a learned process. We teach our children through words and by example. Every parent and every child is unique. It is important to build on strengths, and parents need a support network. So all of these things are things we believe, and they are the core of what we talk about in all of Make Parenting a Pleasure. The curriculum in total is 6 sessions, and you are welcome to take any of them. If any of these sound like, I'm really interested in parenting is a learned process, all of them apply to a specific section of Make Parenting a Pleasure. So go ahead and take the one that you think would apply. If you're not sure, always reach out and ask, and we'd be happy to let you know which one would be best for your interests. These are some group norms. They're created for when we do classes in a group in our central office or at the school, but just wanting to go over them because it's important. What's said in class is confidential. If there's anything today that you hear that you would like to discuss, your family advocate is fully trained on this curriculum, and they would be happy to answer any of your questions. All of that is confidential. We don't tell the teachers that you asked a question about discipline or about communication. We don't talk about those things. It is confidential. So feel free to ask whatever questions you may have. We're a safe person to talk to about those things. Participation is completely voluntary. We always want to remain supportive, non-judgmental, and respectful. So here we go. We're going to talk about discipline today. Children learn what they live. That is very true. We talk about that a lot in other sections of Make Parenting a Pleasure. They do what they see and they learn what they live. So let's talk about it. What is discipline? I'm going to be looking at some notes over here to my left and my right. I've got them all around me right now. So if I turn away, that is what I'm looking at. Not ready to go there. One of the things I'll be looking at is the packet that was attached to the email that you got. And I would definitely pull that up while you're watching this video or print it out. If you're not able to do so, not a problem, but it does have a lot of great resources. It kind of summarizes what I'm going to be saying well. So let's talk about what discipline is. Discipline is teaching. The root word of discipline, I didn't know this, but it's actually disciple, which means to learn. So we use discipline to teach our kids the correct way to respond to situations. We don't want them to throw fits at the store, or that we don't want them to throw a tantrum when it's time to go to school, things like that. And the most important thing we can do in those moments is use it as a way to teach them, not as a way to just punish them. And that's what we're going to be talking about next, is kind of what is the difference between discipline and punishment. Like I said, discipline is teaching. And through discipline, we teach our children our values and rules and why they are important. That's so true. We can't sit a kid down and have a lecture, like a high school lecture class where we would sit down and we would all learn, this is how you do this math problem. We can't do that with kids and talking to them about discipline. They are very much learn in the moment. They learn through the life that they live. So they learn in the moment, oh, I got in trouble for this, and this is what I learned from that situation. The difference between that and punishment is that punishment is damaging. Generally, punishment is there for punishment's purposes. It's just there to tell the child, I didn't like this and you are in trouble. Where discipline is, I didn't like this and yeah, you might be in trouble, but we're also going to learn from it. So that's the biggest difference there. The goal of discipline is to teach children how to discipline themselves, right? We use that word all the time. We talk about self-discipline as adults. And we learned how to discipline ourselves and the things that are important to us because we were disciplined as children. So we teach our children the things they need to know in order to succeed in our society. We teach laws, rules, and the reasons behind the rules, right? And they're rules that they're going to have to follow in life. No one would be happy if I threw a temper tantrum in Walmart picking out my groceries because they didn't have the right brand of cereal that I wanted. If I threw a fit and screamed and threw myself on the ground, it's not going to go well for me. There's going to be some consequences for that, and not in a, when you get the pity look at Walmart, from a mom or dad, like, oh, I'm sorry this is happening, and you feel like everyone's looking at you. Yeah, that's not going to happen anymore. It's going to be a lot worse, right? So we teach them through, family rules and values, but we also teach them, things that we've kind of agreed upon as safety rules as a society. You look both ways before you cross the street, right? We teach all of our kids that. We don't talk to strangers, things like that, things that are just the basic rules of keeping your child safe. So like I said earlier, the root word of discipline is disciple, which means to teach. And punishment, it comes from the Latin word, I'm going to say this wrong, but punire is what it looks like, which means penalty. So you see the difference, like to learn and penalty, where we've kind of treated them like they're the same thing when they're not. They didn't come from the same word. They don't mean the same thing at all. Punishment can hurt a child physically, and it can also hurt them psychologically. They can lose self-esteem. They can feel fear, anxiety, guilt. And, to some extent, yeah, we do want children to recognize, this made me feel guilty, and I don't want to feel that way. I don't want to make people feel bad because then I feel guilty. We do want to teach them that, but we don't necessarily just want to teach them that when you do something wrong, all you should feel is guilt. You just did it wrong and you're just bad, right? We don't want them to learn that. We want them to learn that, when you do something wrong, you learn from it and you grow from it. You apologize for it if that's necessary. That's so much more powerful than just creating an adult that just feels guilty and kind of just says, I'm just a bad person. That's just all there is to it. There's no growth in that statement. Punishment can devalue the child's importance as a human being. Using insults, sarcasm, ridicule, threats, shouting, or even, this says beating, which feels, it's extreme, but it's true. Or spanking, anything physical like that. It can diminish the whole child, not just the child's behavior that we're trying to correct. Punishment techniques also can get a lot harder to enforce as a child gets older and begins to push back, right? I'm sure, I hear it all the time teaching parenting classes that, I got spanked and I turned out just fine. I hear that all the time, but how long did that work for your parents? I'm sure they didn't spank you at 16 when you came home late for curfew. And maybe they did, but as a child gets older and they turn more into a young adult, that's a harder thing to enforce. You can't just shout at them, use physical punishment. It just doesn't work the same way. Where discipline is something that's going to work throughout the child's life. And even, as an adult, sometimes if you're phrasing it as it's a way to learn, I can still get disciplined sometimes by my parents, right? My parents still teach me things. Even now, I will call them and say, my child's driving me crazy. What do I do? And they're teaching me even then. They're not punishing me. They're not putting me down. They're teaching me that it's safe to ask them questions. It's safe to come to them and say, I don't know, I don't understand this. Can you please help me? They're not going to insult me or make fun of me or punish me in any way. They're going to help. And if that's not the case for you and your parents, that isn't how it has to be for you and your children. You want them to know that they can come to you, they can ask questions, and they won't just leave it, they won't stop at feeling guilty or feeling bad about themselves. Sure, they might feel that along the way. That comes with making mistakes. It always will. But they'll know that coming to you, they'll learn and grow from that situation. And I just think that is so powerful because that will change your relationship with them now and as adults. So the way parents interact with and encourage their children in their first year of life helps them shape the way children see themselves and their expectations of themselves in their own world, even as they get older, right? That's a big part of Make Parenting a Pleasure is what we do now impacts them for the rest of their life. They just absorb so much at this age, and they learn so much about the world that they're going to use for the rest of their life. And so using discipline to, encourage your children and teach them is so important for them to be able to navigate the world as they get older. I always love this. It says in my notes, like little mirrors, they will reflect back the ways they have been treated. It's so true, right? They repeat everything back, just because they sometimes repeat the words that we don't want them to say, they're going to repeat the behaviors that we don't want them to copy as well. We want to establish a foundation of positive attention and encouragement from the beginning of your child's life. Acknowledging positive behavior encourages positive behavior and fosters a sense of self-worth. So we're going to go through that a little bit more in just a second. First, I want to come over here to the 4 questions. So if you've taken our challenging behaviors class, you've seen these before, and I hope that they really helped you out in what it looks like to discipline or correct challenging behaviors with your child. But I want to go over it here because I think it's a great way to tell the difference between discipline and punishment. So think about the way that you discipline your child now. Obviously, it might have been the first time you've heard of the difference between discipline and punishment is today. It was the first time I heard it was in a Make Parenting a Pleasure class. And that's totally fine. I don't want to impose any guilt at all to anyone either, but we want to go through and try and figure out, is what we've been doing discipline or punishment now, so that we can grow from that situation and just change our behaviors and work on it the best we can. Excuse me. So these 4 questions are, what do I want my child to learn from this experience, situation, or opportunity? Is what I'm doing helping my child to learn that? Are there any negative effects from my behavior? If so, what can I do differently? So let's say, for example, that when your child will go back to throwing a temper tantrum in the grocery store. If you've watched very many of these classes, you probably know that I have dealt with a lot of children throwing fits in grocery stores because that's always the example I end up using. But let's say, for example, that my child is throwing a huge fit in Walmart because I wouldn't let them get a new toy, right? That happens all the time, it feels like. And the problem probably is, they're disappointed that they didn't get the toy, and they're acting out because they think if I just yell loud enough, maybe I'll give it to them. Or maybe they think, this is just how you're supposed to express the emotion that you're upset. So either way, whichever one that the belief that they're operating off of, whether that is they're upset or they're trying to get a different outcome, the way that I discipline them is going to help them learn from that situation. So what do I want my child to learn from this opportunity, experience, or situation? I want them to learn that that's not the way you process an emotion of you not getting what you want. That's not how I want you to handle that as an adult, is throwing a fit and acting a fool at Walmart. So what is something I could do to teach them what I would rather them do? Probably yelling at them in Walmart is probably not going to do that. It might stop the behavior, but I would worry that it would be more so because they were either afraid of me, or they just felt like they were a bad kid, or maybe they were even embarrassed, that they got yelled at in front of other people. And I don't want them to feel any of those things. I do want them to stop the behavior, but I don't want them to feel like, oh, I'm just a bad kid, or feel afraid of me. I don't ever want my kids to be afraid of their mom. That's just not a healthy place for them to be in. So maybe instead, taking them off to the side where I can look them in the eye and say, this is not how we handle this. I will not get you that toy, regardless of how you are acting right now. So you can either choose to be a good girl and we can continue with our shopping and have a nice time together, and we'll play when we get home with the wonderful toys you do have, or you can continue throwing a fit and mommy will have to ignore that because that's not the way you're going to get what you want with me. And that sounds like a lot of words, right? That sounds like, Haley, they're just little kids. Are they really going to be able to handle that? But kids learn so much so quickly, and they do want nothing more than to just make us happy. I'm sure you've seen that in your child. They just want to do what you want them to do. They want to make you happy, but sometimes they, get a little sidetracked. They get upset, and they have to learn how to handle that. So it's always been my experience with my children and even the kids that I work with, in our program in the classroom, that they can handle things being explained to them, and they might not listen, they might not care, they might continue to throw a fit, but I've stated the reasons why we're not going to do what they want at this moment. I'm not going to buy you a toy just because we went grocery shopping. That's not going to happen. So I continue repeating, like, this is not going to happen right now. I would really like to continue our shopping trip nicely. Sometimes you can use things like, when we get home, we can play with this specific toy, or, in the summertime, we can go to the splash pad this afternoon if you behave right now. Because that's a way to correct that behavior as well. You have to do what I'm saying now so that you can get something that you want later. We have to obey, as adults, we have to obey rules at our job. We have to obey rules in the law. Otherwise, we don't get a paycheck, or otherwise we might, have to pay a ticket or something like that. There's rules that we have to follow in order to reap the benefits of the things that we want to do. So I think that's a perfectly great way to learn and help them learn from that situation. Maybe that won't work for you, but using this time to really think about a situation where you had to discipline, in the last week, and seeing what did I do, and answer those 4 questions, go through them. Because if I had chosen to yell or scream or even spank my child at Walmart, all I've taught them is that if you disobey me, I'm going to spank you or I'm going to scream at you, which I don't want them to learn. That, that's not true. There's going to be times in life where they disappoint me, and that's not what I want them to know about their mom. I want them to learn how to correct that behavior, instead of just learning that if I'm bad, I get hit or I get yelled at. That's not helping them learn better behaviors. That's just helping them learn to be afraid of when they make a mistake, something bad is going to happen to me. Are there any negative effects to that behavior? If so, what can you do differently? So, if I went through and my plan was that I was going to yell, I can go through and see there are negative effects and that they didn't learn what I want them to learn from that situation. So now I need to go back to square one and really think about, what do I want to do? And we'll talk about some strategies and things as we go through the rest of the discipline section. But if you're thinking through strategies and you're kind of drawing a blank of what might work for your child, please go back to our challenging behaviors section, because that's really what we talk about, is different strategies. We also talk about the reasons why children act out. Why do kids hit? Why do they bite? What's going through their mind that makes sense to them, that's what they need to do right now? I really encourage you to go back if strategies might be something that you could really learn from. So we do have a few videos on here. They might have been included in your email. If they were not, you can always ask to see them. Most of them are just funny. They're not necessarily there to teach a whole lot, but it is important in our company and in raising kids. We really like to keep a good sense of humor about what's going on, because you just have to in working with small children and trying to mold and shape their minds into being productive adults. So if you're interested in those, reach out. They are funny and they are relevant to what we're talking about. So now we're going to talk about ways to giving positive attention. So there's a couple examples, like having special time and showing approval. But we do this because we want to reinforce for our young children that it's important, to us to spend time with them and that we enjoy that time. It's important for them to get undivided attention. Some parents report that having regular daily special time with a child lessens the child's demands for his parents' attention at other times. There's a lot of times that kids can get upset about a specific situation, but how often do we know that they're not upset about that? They're upset because they want attention, or they're tired, or they're hungry, or they had a bad day at school. Those are things that by giving this positive attention, we can kind of counteract that. We would rather give them that attention before there's a behavior that we need to correct, because that's not how you get mommy or daddy's attention. You get our attention by, we set aside time to do these special things. So then when I'm trying to cook dinner, hopefully, right? Hopefully, your child will then not feel that need to get your attention in any way possible, because that's not what we want, right? We just want to be able to cook dinner and our child to just sit there and either watch their cartoons or play with their sibling or whatever we need them to do. We just want them to do that for a few minutes, right? So we want to have special time with them. It says on here, setting aside special time each day to spend alone time with each child. I think that sounds great in a super ideal world. I do not want you to go from spending no special time with your children individually to saying you're going to do it with each child every single day. I think that's a great goal to work towards, but it's hard, right? Especially when, some of your kids might be in the full day program or in elementary school, high school, whatever grades they're in, or some of them might be in half day, and then there's soccer, and then you got to cook dinner, and then you might be working, and there's so many things in each day that can be really difficult. So I don't want you to set a very high expectation for yourself too quickly, because that is a big goal to work towards. The time that you set aside should be regular enough for the child to count on it. So what we mean by that is scheduling that time for the same amount of time and doing it at relatively the same time every day. So an example of this that I really like is when my children get home from school. Generally they want a snack, right? And then what we would do is we would have like 10 minutes of, we called it dancing the willies out. And really all that was is, the older child had homework that she needed to do. I mean, third grade, but still, they have homework that they need to do. And so we would have this 10 minutes of having fun dancing together. And I would just play it off of YouTube and we would dance together. And after that 10 minutes was up, they knew it was 10 minutes long. Once we hit that routine, at first, of course, the kids are going to be upset when you say that it's over, but eventually they learn, we do this for a few minutes and then we move on and we go do something different. So at that time, when the 10 minutes was over, the oldest, she goes to do her homework. And the youngest, she just wants to be like her older sister though. So I don't know if this would necessarily work, but she would do homework. It would be things that I printed out that, it was tracing her name or drawing a picture. I would give her a little assignment and she would they would all be in the kitchen sitting there doing those things. And I would start cooking dinner. So when the youngest was done with her fake homework, she might come over and help me with, age appropriate tasks that she can help me with. And I found after we got in that routine, the beginning might have been a little bit rough, but after we got in that routine, it turned into this is just what we do. Because at school, they're in a real routine, whether they're in preschool, elementary school, whatever age they're in, they do certain things at a certain time every single day. And eventually, a child doesn't throw a fit every single time they have to come in from recess. They enjoy that time, that outside play, but they know how long it is. They know it's going to come to an end. And then we're going to go inside and we're going to do other things, whether that's, eat lunch or start doing circle time, whatever it is. Once they've hit that routine, they generally aren't throwing those fits anymore. They know what's happening and they can count on that regular schedule. They can count on that special time with you. The time also needs to be centered on the child's wants or needs. So if your children don't like singing and dancing and acting crazy, then probably doing the same thing that I do with my kids isn't going to work for you. So what is something that your child really wants or needs from you? Are they, do they need to get energy out? You could play a sport together. You could play a game. You could read a book. You could do so many things. What are your child's interests? What are your interests? And can we grow your relationship by bonding over those similar interests while also providing that special time? You know your children the best. So just think about what's something that they might need and how can you provide that and do it regularly. And like I said, mine's only 10 minutes. Yours doesn't have to be 30 minutes with each kid every day. That's just not going to happen in the world we live in right now. There is too much going on. So, think of maybe 5 minutes with each kid, or, mine was together with both of my kids. And so, you just have to see what works best for your family. And if you need help with that, again, family advocates, that's what they're there for. A lot of times we get calls about more practical, practical as in like we need information on a food bank or something like that. But we're also here to help you brainstorm ideas of how to parent, because it's kind of hard sometimes to find someone to bounce those ideas off of, and that's what we're here for. So another way to give positive attention is showing approval. So when your children are doing something good, you have that opportunity to show approval. Just like when they are doing something bad or something we don't like, we give them the opportunity to learn. They can also learn from when they do something good. So one is, picking up their clothes and putting them in the hamper. It's very age appropriate that, a child that is in the Head Start program, for the most part and older, are going to be able to understand that when your clothes are dirty, you pick them up, you don't put them on the floor, and you put them in the hamper. That can be the extent of what they have to do as far as dirty clothes go. But catching them in that act and saying, like, thank you so much, you helped out mommy so much, because now I have more time to play with you instead of picking up after you. Showing them approval and why you approve of that behavior is really, really important. Because like I said earlier, they do want to make us happy. They just might not know how. And so by telling them how this makes you happy, you're golden. You're teaching them a ton about behavior without waiting until that behavior has gone poorly. We also want to give the reason why the behavior is important to us specifically or to the world. They can do, like, they could pick up trash outside. Like maybe they pick up a, not something gross. I was thinking of like a can or something, but maybe they help you with something like that, and you can praise them for that behavior. Another is we want to show this approval to encourage your child to continue a particular behavior. So these are a couple ideas for special time activities. We do the Tootie-Ta song. We do that in the classroom. We also do, going on a bear hunt. We do Baby Shark sometimes. There's tons of these videos on YouTube that have these sing-along choreographed moves, dances, and it helps them get some energy out. And it's also just a fun thing to laugh at. You know, kids laugh when we do funny things like that, and it's just a fun way for you to bond together. So now we're going to go to the 7 steps of encouraging positive behavior. So we want to give positive attention as closely after the behavior as possible. We want to be sure to change up our wording. We don't want to say the same thing every single time. We want to avoid repeating and forming the habit of saying the same thing. So we don't just want to say good job, that's nice, or thanks all of the time. We want to pair it with a behavior. So good job picking up your clothes. That really helped mommy out because now I can do blank. Not just thanks. Thanks for what? Why are you telling me thank you? Why was this helpful? That means so much more to children. It even means more to us as adults. So we want to notice the positive behavior. We want to give attention up close. So it's the same way with working through those challenging behaviors. We want to make good eye contact. We want to get down on their level and make sure they're paying attention. It's important that they understand what the positive behaviors we want to encourage. We want to smile and compliment the behavior. We want to be affectionate, whether that's giving them a big hug at the end, giving them a high five because they're doing so awesome, and repeating that message in a different way. So just because they do a good behavior one time and you acknowledged it doesn't mean you have to move on. You can encourage that multiple times. Just keep changing the way you're saying it. Just keep helping them learn, why is this positive behavior good? Why do I need to do this? So take a moment and just think about, how are you going to encourage positive behavior? What is something that you want to do for your kids when they do something great? You can pause the video for just a second if you want a second to think about it, maybe jot down some notes. You can also jot down any questions you've had to this point, because like I said, your family advocate can answer all of those. They know all about Make Parenting a Pleasure. And if you don't want to do that right now, just come back to it. I'm going to keep going, but if you want to sit and think about it now, just hit pause and then hit play when you're ready to move on. So let's talk about self-esteem for just a minute. We want to set up our children for success in every area, right? So to build self-esteem, we want to say these things that they need to hear. We want to tell them that they can do it, that they have good ideas, and that they're important and that they matter to us. Ways that we can do that is we can break things into smaller steps. You know, if we tell a child to get ready for school, that might work. Your child might know exactly what that means, but this is just an example, but we could break that down to so much smaller pieces. We could say, get up out of bed, pull your covers up, and then go to the bathroom. Great, that's 3 things. That is 3 steps that they can follow, which actually is one of the things that we work on with them in the classroom. We hope that by the time they're going to kindergarten, they can follow 3 to 4 steps, and they can recall those things and do them without being retold over and over and over again. So practice that at home, do the 3 or 4. Break it down, and that way you're setting them up for success a little bit more, right? If we just tell them to get ready for school and we don't check in with them again until it's time to leave, then now we're probably going to be frustrated, and we're probably going to let our children know that we are frustrated because they're not ready. But if you just tell a 4-year-old to get ready for school, I'm not telling you anything new, it won't happen. They won't have gotten dressed, or maybe they did, but it's not right, or they don't have their shoes on and they can't find their coat, or they can't find their backpack, whatever it is. It's just not going to happen all the way in the way we want it to. So break it down a little bit so we can build up their self-esteem that they did accomplish what you asked them to do. So set that expectation where it needs to be. We want to start with things that our children like to do so we can build up that self-esteem to then continue learning to do things. It can be frustrating to learn something new as adults, right? We still feel that way, but children are learning so much all the time. There's so much that's new that they can get frustrated. So let's start with the things they know, the things that they like. We want to respond to them when they ask for help. We don't always necessarily have to ask, like, do you need help? We can ask, can I help you? And if they say no, then allowing them to struggle through whatever that task is to get it done, because they're going to have to learn eventually. And it takes time, they have to practice, they have to learn. We want to stay involved in that process without taking over, because if we just say, get out of the way, just let me do it, that doesn't feel good. That doesn't feel good to any of us. It definitely doesn't feel good to a child who really, truly is trying their hardest to do what you've asked of them. We want to give attention and encouragement for what your child is trying to do. We want to focus on the effort that they're giving, not necessarily the outcome. If they're trying really, really hard, that's great. Acknowledge that. Even if they can't get it done, praise them for, I love how hard that you tried. And you know what? I'm going to keep helping you. We're going to keep practicing, and you're going to get it. It's going to be okay. And then just move on. You've made that situation positive and given them something to work towards now. We also want to give them choices that are simple and limited. Each of them you have to be happy with. We talked about that a little bit in the past parts of Make Parenting a Pleasure, but you can give them options that builds their self-esteem, that they get to make a decision about their own lives for themselves, because at that age, how many decisions do they really get to make for themselves? But make sure you're okay with both outcomes. Don't say you can either do your homework or go play with your friends outside, because you probably want them to do their homework, I'm guessing, but they're not going to pick that, right? We all know that. But you can change it to when you're getting ready for bed, for example, and they need to brush their teeth and they need to take a bath before they put their pajamas on. You can say, which one would you rather do first? Would you rather brush your teeth or take a bath? And let them pick, because it really doesn't matter, most likely, which order they do those things in. So, think about your routines and think about what you are expecting of your children, and decide, where can I offer some option, and what can I come up with where I'm okay with whatever they choose. We also want to, continue to encourage them that they are important. Just because they're kids and they can't make these big decisions and do all of these things for themselves, they're still important. They're just learning. And we want to tell them this with words and in actions. We want to always be reminding them with the things that we do that they are important, that they matter, and that we love them. So this is a great video. It's about self-esteem. The reason that I don't play the videos in these classes is because the audio in the video won't line up, because this is a recording. But basically what they're talking about is they show little kids, they ask them, what does it look like to run like a girl? What does it look like to try really hard? And they show them, they're trying really hard, they run really fast, and they do the best that they can. And then as adults, we ask them the same question. What does it look like to run like a girl? And they're throwing their hair, oops, sorry, I hit that. They're throwing their hair around and they're bouncing and they're not trying that hard. And then they show them what these little kids do. And, it changes us. The kids see the world through a way they can accomplish anything. And at some point we kind of forget that. And we don't want our kids to be that way. They have so much pressure and influence from society. We want to make sure that they feel supported and loved in their home. You want to refer to the 100 ways to stay very good. We want to encourage positive behavior, and we want to use the language of encouragement. All of those things, they are laid out in the packets that are attached to the email, so feel free to print them out. Some of these are on my fridge. I hang them up so I can remember the things that I'm working on throughout Make Parenting a Pleasure. So what are some things you have said to your children that may have put pressure on them and maybe didn't affect their self-esteem in the way we want to? It's a hard question to answer. It's a hard thing to think about, but it's really, really important that you do. And we look at, okay, then what am I going to do differently? How do I want to change and grow in this area? That takes guts to say that you want to change and grow in an area, especially in parenting. But I believe that because you're taking this class, you are brave enough to make those decisions and make those changes so that you can be the parent that you want to be. Don't just be the parent that has the knee-jerk reactions. Be the parent that is intentional in their decisions for discipline. And then follows through, whatever that needs to look like for you. If you need to make an accountability plan or an accountability partner, reach out. And if you don't have that person, again, please contact your family advocate. So if there are any questions that you have, please feel free to reach out and ask your family advocate. They would be happy to also print out any of these packets for you or the slides, anything that you need. I've really enjoyed talking through discipline and going through this curriculum with you, and I hope you got something out of it. If you are interested in taking any of these other classes, go ahead and do so, and just click on the links in the emails. Be sure that you're filling out that pre and post survey for each video that you watch. So go ahead and do that now. We are done with the curriculum, but go back to that email, fill out the post survey, and then do it with the rest of the classes, whatever you please. Thank you so much for coming. I've really enjoyed it. And I wish you all the best in disciplining and making parenting a pleasure.